Beloved of the Lord, today is a day of divine breakthrough, a moment where the heaviness of anxiety, fear, and internal pressure can finally be lifted from your life. Have you ever felt trapped in the tension of your own thoughts, wondering if relief will ever come? I want you to take a deep breath and open your heart right now, because what we are about to do together will activate a powerful shift within you. Can you imagine stepping into a space where peace flows freely, where fear loses its grip and anxiety has no room to thrive? That space is not far away. It is right here, right now, through the power of prayer that penetrates deep into your spirit. I want you to reflect for a moment. What would your day look like if every ounce of pressure and stress simply lifted? Tell me in the comments, what would freedom feel like to you today? This is not just any prayer. This is an atomic prayer designed to touch the core of your being and release supernatural peace. As we go through it together, I encourage you to engage fully, speak it aloud, feel it resonate, and let your spirit respond. Have you ever noticed how just a few moments of focused prayer can completely change the energy around you? Share that experience with others by liking, commenting, or sending this message to someone who needs it. Beloved, the Lord is ready to meet you in this very moment, to dissolve fear, to calm anxiety, and to remove the weight that has been holding you down. Are you ready to receive it fully? Your breakthrough is closer than you think, and all you need to do is believe, receive, and participate in this sacred moment of transformation. Beloved of the Lord, let us begin with the first key point, releasing fear and anxiety through focused prayer. Have you ever noticed how fear can quietly creep into your thoughts, shaping your decisions, your moods, and even the way you interact with the world? Sometimes it's subtle, a whisper that tells you you're not enough, that tomorrow will be too hard, that you cannot handle what is coming. And other times it is loud, demanding, paralyzing, keeping you awake at night and clouding your mind with tension. Have you felt that weight before, where every breath feels heavier than the last, and the worries of life seem to multiply beyond control? Prayer is not just a ritual. It is a divine conversation that reaches deep into your spirit. When you pray with focus, you are aligning your heart with God's power, inviting His presence to push back the shadows of fear. Do you believe that something as simple as your words, spoken with intention, can begin to shift your reality? Many times we underestimate the strength that resides within a heartfelt prayer, but this is where true transformation begins. Fear thrives in isolation, in the quiet corners of your mind where doubt and anxiety grow unchecked. But when you bring your fears into the light through prayer, you are declaring that they no longer have dominion over you. Think about the moments when anxiety has gripped you the most. What were you telling yourself in those moments? Were you thinking you couldn't manage, that the situation was hopeless, or that you were alone in your struggle? Beloved, God's word reminds us that no weapon formed against us shall prosper, and fear is just one of those weapons when left unchallenged. Focused prayer is your spiritual armor. It protects your mind, shields your heart, and restores your peace. It is a deliberate act, a conscious decision to lift every worry, every anxious thought, and place it in the hands of a God who is bigger than any challenge you face. When you engage in focused prayer, it requires presence and intention. It's not merely repeating words, it's connecting deeply with the source of all peace. Can you imagine the power in speaking directly to the Creator, the one who knows every detail of your life, and releasing every fear into His care? There's something miraculous about knowing that the one who holds the universe also holds your life, your circumstances, and your future. And when you realize this truth, you begin to understand that fear has no lasting authority over you. It is temporary, it is limited, and it is powerless against the prayer of a child of God. Beloved, anxiety often arises when we focus on what we cannot control. We obsess over outcomes, over what others may think, over the uncertainties that seem to surround us. Through focused prayer, you redirect your attention away from those things and toward the one who is in control. Have you ever felt the relief of surrendering a situation fully to God, letting go of the need to control every detail, and trusting Him completely? Moment of surrender is where fear begins to lose its grip. It's not that the challenges disappear immediately, but your perspective shifts. Suddenly, you are not battling alone. You are partnered with divine power, and fear must bow in the presence of that authority. When you release fear and anxiety through prayer, you are not ignoring reality. You are not pretending that challenges don't exist. Instead, you are acknowledging that while challenges are present, you have a source far greater than any obstacle. Focused prayer teaches your spirit to recognize God's sovereignty over every situation. Are you willing to take a moment right now to ask God to remove the fear that has been holding you back, to declare that anxiety will no longer dictate your thoughts, your choices, or your future? This is the key, the act of speaking to God, of intentionally inviting Him into the spaces fear occupies, begins a process of liberation within you. Fear often manifests physically: tight shoulders, racing heart, shallow breathing. Anxiety can make your body feel as heavy as your thoughts. But when you practice focused prayer, it begins to transform not only your mind, but your body. Have you noticed how even a few moments of intentional prayer can bring a sense of calm, a slowing of the heartbeat, a release of tension from your muscles? This is no coincidence. It is the Spirit of God working through your obedience, your focus, and your faith. Prayer becomes a conduit, channeling peace into every part of your being, dissolving the tight grip that fear once had. Many people struggle with repeated cycles of fear and worry. They pray, they feel better, but then the anxiety creeps back in. This is why focused, consistent prayer is so essential. It's not just a one-time action. It's a lifestyle of turning to God at every moment of doubt, every flutter of worry, every shadow of fear. Can you commit to making prayer your first response rather than your last resort? When fear arises, when anxiety whispers, do you run to it? Do you run to the one who promises peace? The key is consistent, intentional engagement with God, a habit that strengthens your spirit, trains your mind, and fortifies your heart. Beloved, releasing fear and anxiety is also about speaking life into your circumstances. As you pray, declare God's promises over your life. Speak peace, protection, and confidence into the situations that once overwhelmed you. Have you ever taken a moment to verbalize the truth of God's word over your fears? When you do, something shifts, not just around you, but within you. Your mind starts to see possibilities instead of limitations. Your heart begins to trust instead of panic. And your spirit becomes grounded in faith rather than swayed by worry. Remember, fear thrives on silence and secrecy. Anxiety grows in the shadows where no light is shown. Focused prayer brings the light of God's presence directly into those spaces. Are you willing to shine that light today, to confront your fears with the power of spoken prayer and watch them dissolve before your eyes? This is the miracle of divine connection. The act of intentionally turning your thoughts and your voice toward God has the power to uproot fear from the deepest parts of your being. The process of releasing fear and anxiety through focused prayer is transformational. Each time you do it, you are strengthening your spiritual muscles, building resilience, and cultivating a mindset rooted in trust, not tension. Can you feel the shift already, even as you hear these words? Can you imagine carrying that freedom with you into every decision, every interaction, every moment of your day? This is what focused prayer accomplishes. It empowers you to rise above the inner storms and experience a peace that surpasses understanding. Beloved, the first step is simply to start, to take the fear you have been holding on to and bring it to God in prayer. Speak honestly, speak boldly, and speak from the depths of your heart. Ask yourself, right now, what fear am I willing to release today? Which anxious thought am I ready to surrender to a power greater than my own? This is not a suggestion. It is an invitation to step into a new reality where anxiety does not rule and fear does not define you. The moment you embrace this practice, you are taking your first powerful step towards spiritual, emotional, and mental freedom. Beloved of the Lord, let us focus now on activating inner peace and supernatural calm, because this is a cornerstone of living a life free from anxiety and internal pressure. Have you ever noticed how restless your mind can become, even in the middle of your daily routine? Sometimes, no matter how busy or productive we are, there's an underlying tension that refuses to leave, a quiet storm in the spirit that whispers, "You are not safe. You are not enough. You cannot handle this." Have you felt that quiet unrest lately, that subtle unease that seems to linger no matter what you do? Inner peace is not just a state of mind. It is a spiritual experience, a supernatural calm that surpasses human understanding. It is not dependent on circumstances or external conditions, and that is the beauty of it. Can you imagine waking up each morning with a sense of calm so deep that it shields you from the chaos of the world around you? This is possible, and it begins with intentionally inviting God's presence into the very core of your being. When you cultivate inner peace through prayer, you are not merely hoping for relief. You are activating a force that transforms your mind, your heart, and your environment. Many people confuse peace with the absence of problems. They think that only when difficulties disappear can they feel calm. But supernatural peace works differently. It rises above the challenges. It walks through storms without fear. It remains steady when the world seems unstable. Have you ever experienced a moment of quiet in the middle of chaos, where despite everything around you, your soul remained undisturbed? That is the power of supernatural calm. It is a gift that is available to you every single day, the moment you choose to align your spirit with God's presence. Activating this peace requires intentionality. It requires you to focus your mind, quiet your thoughts, and bring every anxious idea into the light of divine truth. Have you tried speaking to your spirit the way you would to a friend in need, gently, confidently, and with full assurance that peace is possible? When you do this, you are declaring that the unrest will not dominate your life. You are telling your mind, your body, and your spirit that calm is your inheritance, and it is not negotiable. Supernatural calm also allows you to respond rather than react. When peace fills your spirit, you no longer make decisions from fear, stress, or pressure. Instead, you operate from clarity, wisdom, and confidence. Can you picture yourself walking into a difficult situation, a tense conversation, or a stressful environment, yet feeling grounded, centered, and unshakable? That is the fruit of a spirit infused with God's peace. It's not theoretical, it is practical, tangible, and life-changing. One of the most effective ways to activate inner peace is through speaking declarations over your life. When you pray, say aloud that you will not be shaken by fear, that calm will rule your mind, and that God's peace is a constant companion. Have you ever noticed how words can shape your reality? How what you speak can influence your mood, your decisions, and your environment? Focused, faith-filled declarations are powerful tools to anchor peace in your heart. The moment you speak with authority, fear begins to retreat and anxiety loses its grip. Peace also grows through gratitude. When you recognize the blessings in your life, even the smallest ones, your spirit shifts from lack and worry to abundance and calm. Are you willing to pause right now and reflect on 3 things you are thankful for today, no matter how small? This simple act has the power to rewire your mind, redirect your focus, and deepen the experience of supernatural calm. Gratitude opens the door for peace to take root in your spirit, and once it is established, it becomes a shield against fear and pressure. Have you noticed how stress often comes from trying to control what cannot be controlled? Activating inner peace allows you to release that need for control and trust in God's plan. It doesn't mean that you are passive or indifferent. It means that you are empowered, confident, and aligned with the source of all wisdom. When you choose calm over chaos, you are choosing life, clarity, and divine perspective. Have you been holding on to situations tightly, trying to manage outcomes that only God can orchestrate? Let this be the moment you release them into His capable hands. Supernatural calm also impacts your physical body. Anxiety manifests in tension, headaches, and fatigue. Peace, on the other hand, relaxes muscles, slows the heartbeat, and restores energy. Have you experienced that subtle shift when your spirit settles, when your breathing becomes easier, and your body feels lighter? That is the evidence of God's supernatural calm at work. The more you practice focusing your spirit, the more natural this state becomes, and the easier it is to maintain peace in any situation. Activating inner peace is also a choice to resist negativity. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and worry will attempt to invade your mind, but you have the power to redirect them. Have you ever tried to consciously replace a negative thought with a declaration of peace? This act of spiritual discipline trains your mind, strengthens your spirit, and reinforces your confidence in God's ability to bring calm in every circumstance. Peace is not passive. It is an active force that you cultivate daily, moment by moment, thought by thought, prayer by prayer. Beloved, engaging in this practice consistently transforms your life. As your inner peace grows, you find clarity in decision-making, stability in emotional storms, and a confident expectation that God is working on your behalf. Can you feel the shift already, even as you hear these words? The gentle stirring of calm within your spirit. This is the beginning of a new chapter where you walk with a heart unshaken, a mind clear, and a spirit aligned with the supernatural calm that God desires for you. Beloved of the Lord, let us now turn our attention to breaking free from internal pressure and tension, because this is a vital step in living a life of freedom, clarity, and divine purpose. Have you ever felt that invisible weight pressing down on your chest, a kind of pressure that no one else seems to notice, but you feel every single day? It's the tension that makes you restless, keeps your mind racing, and sometimes even prevents you from sleeping. Can you relate to that feeling right now? The heaviness of expectations, responsibilities, and self-imposed pressure that seems impossible to shake. Internal pressure often comes from the expectations we place on ourselves or those we feel from others. We try to perform, to succeed, to prove ourselves worthy, and in doing so, we carry burdens far heavier than necessary. But God never intended for His children to live under that kind of strain. Can you imagine what it would feel like to release that weight today, to let go of the need to constantly control, achieve, or manage every detail? That sense of freedom is not only possible, it is your inheritance. Prayer is a powerful tool for breaking free from this pressure. When you bring your tension, your worries, and your self-imposed stress into God's presence, you are handing over what is not yours to carry. Have you ever tried that, speaking honestly to God about your overwhelm? your frustration, or your exhaustion. When you do, you are taking a critical step in liberating your spirit. Internal pressure cannot thrive where divine presence dwells. One of the reasons we feel internal tension is because we allow our thoughts to spin uncontrollably. We replay mistakes, anticipate failures, or worry about outcomes we cannot predict. But when you engage in focused prayer, you create a spiritual space where those thoughts lose their power. Have you noticed how when you intentionally shift your focus to God, a sense of clarity begins to emerge? That clarity is a sign that the pressure is loosening its grip. Tension is starting to dissolve, and that your spirit is beginning to experience freedom. Breaking free from internal pressure also requires speaking truth to yourself. You must consciously affirm that you are not defined by stress, anxiety, or the burdens of life. Are you willing to say aloud, "I am released from the pressure that does not belong to me, and I am free to walk in peace and purpose"? Those words are not just declarations. They are spiritual commands that carry authority. When you speak them with faith, you begin to reprogram your mind, recalibrate your heart, and strengthen your spirit against tension. Internal pressure often hides beneath the surface, manifesting in subtle ways: irritability, fatigue, or the feeling that you are always on edge. But when you consistently turn to prayer and intentional focus, these hidden pressures begin to surface so they can be addressed and released. Can you feel any part of your day or your life where this tension has been quietly ruling? Bringing it into the light allows you to confront it, speak to it, and remove it through God's power. Another key to overcoming internal pressure is prioritizing your connection with God above all else. So often, we let schedules, responsibilities, expectations dictate our energy, leaving little room for spiritual replenishment. When you intentionally spend time in prayer, reflection, and worship, you create a space where pressure cannot persist. Have you noticed how even a few minutes of focused prayer can reset your entire outlook and lighten the load on your spirit? That is because God's presence is like a gentle hand lifting the burdens we cannot release on our own. Internal pressure can also stem from fear of failure, rejection, or not being enough. These fears amplify tension, making small challenges feel insurmountable. But when you confront those fears through prayer, they lose their power. Are you willing to name the fears that have been driving your pressure today? Speaking them aloud in God's presence is a form of spiritual release, a declaration that fear will no longer control your life. Breaking free from tension also involves understanding that you are not alone. Internal pressure often convinces us that we are isolated, carrying struggles that no one else can understand. But the truth is, God is with you. He is ready to provide the strength, wisdom, and clarity you need. Have you ever felt the comforting awareness of God's presence in a moment of stress, where suddenly the load feels lighter and your heart steadies? That is the beginning of freedom from internal pressure. As you release tension through prayer, you also create space for creativity, clarity, and divine guidance. Pressure clouds judgment and blocks insight. But when you step into a calm, focused state, solutions and ideas begin to emerge naturally. Have you noticed that some of your best decisions happen when your mind is at peace, not when you are overwhelmed? That is no accident. It is a divine pattern that teaches us the value of surrendering internal pressure. Beloved, internal pressure does not just affect your spirit. It affects your body, your relationships, and your overall well-being. When you carry tension constantly, it can lead to headaches, fatigue, and emotional strain. Focused prayer and intentional spiritual practice act as a release valve, reducing the burden and allowing your entire being to align with God's peace. Can you sense areas in your life where tension has been quietly wearing you down, affecting your energy, focus, or even your joy. Identifying those areas is the first step toward true liberation. Breaking free from internal pressure is a process, not an instant event. It requires commitment, awareness, and consistent action. Every time you pause to pray, to declare freedom, and to invite God's presence, you weaken the grip of tension on your life. Have you been consistent in doing that, or have you allowed old patterns of stress to take priority over your spiritual practices? Remember, freedom is cultivated through deliberate engagement, not by accident. Beloved, each time you release internal pressure, you reclaim the space for God's purpose in your life. You are no longer weighed down by fear, expectation, or anxiety. You can think clearly, make confident decisions, and experience a sense of joy and lightness that was previously overshadowed by tension. Can you feel even a small shift right now as you recognize that the power to overcome internal pressure has always been within you, waiting to be activated through focused prayer and faith? Beloved of the Lord, let us now focus on engaging your spirit to experience immediate transformation, because this is where true change begins, not just in your circumstances, deep within your very being. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to shift their lives almost overnight, stepping into clarity, peace, and confidence, while others remain stuck in the same patterns of worry and doubt? Could it be that the difference lies not in what they face, but in how they engage their spirit with God? Engaging your spirit is a deliberate act, a conscious choice to connect with the divine source of power, wisdom, and authority that resides within you. Have you noticed how easy it is to get caught up in thoughts, emotions, or reactions, yet feel disconnected from your inner strength? That disconnect is what keeps you from experiencing immediate transformation. But when you intentionally turn your focus inward and upward to align with God's Spirit, change begins to manifest from the inside out. Transformation begins in the heart and mind. When you pray, declare, and meditate with intention, your spirit begins to respond. Have you ever felt a sudden sense of peace or clarity while in prayer, as if a weight you didn't even realize you were carrying had lifted? That is your spirit awakening to the power available to you. Immediate transformation is not theoretical. It is practical, tangible, and accessible the moment you engage fully with God's presence. One of the most powerful ways to engage your spirit is through spoken declarations. When you verbalize the truth of God's promises over your life, your spirit begins to resonate with those truths. Have you tried declaring, "I am a new creation, I am empowered, I am free," and truly believing it with every fiber of your being? The moment you speak these words, something within you shifts. Your mind begins to accept new possibilities, your heart embraces hope, and your spirit steps into alignment with divine power. Engaging your spirit also requires faith. Faith is the bridge between what is and what could be. Have you noticed how even in challenging situations, a small act of faith can create ripples of change? When you engage your spirit in faith-filled action through prayer, meditation, or declaration, you are essentially activating your internal spiritual resources. This is how immediate transformation happens, not by waiting for circumstances to change first, but by changing the spirit within you, which in turn transforms your experience of life. Have you ever felt frustrated that things in your life didn't change even though you prayed or tried hard? That often happens when the engagement is superficial. Engaging your spirit requires depth, a willingness to surrender your fears, to speak truth over your doubts, and to fully trust God's timing and power. When you commit to this level of engagement, transformation is not just possible, it becomes inevitable. Another key to immediate transformation is focus. Your spirit responds to directed, intentional attention. Are you willing to pause for a moment and consider where your focus has been on problems, on limitations, or on the infinite possibilities available through God's power? When you shift your focus intentionally, your spirit begins to move, your mind begins to clear, and the patterns that once held you back begin to dissolve. Transformation also requires consistency. Just as muscles strengthen through regular exercise, your spirit strengthens through intentional, repeated engagement. Have you been consistent in speaking, praying, and acting from a place of alignment with God? Or have you allowed distraction and fatigue to pull you away? The more you consistently engage your spirit, the quicker you experience tangible, measurable change in your life, your thoughts, and your relationships. Immediate transformation is also about alignment with God's purpose for your life. When your actions, your thoughts, and your spirit are all working in harmony with divine guidance, change happens effortlessly. Can you think of a time when you acted in alignment with what you felt God calling you to do, and everything began to shift in your favor? That is the power of engagement, your spirit becoming the vehicle for divine action, manifesting transformation right before your eyes. Engaging your spirit also opens the door for supernatural insight and wisdom. Many times we feel stuck because we rely solely on human understanding. Have you ever been in a situation where suddenly an idea, a solution, or clarity came to you seemingly out of nowhere? That is your spirit in communion with God, producing insight that your mind alone could not generate. Immediate transformation is tied to this kind of spiritual engagement, where divine wisdom flows into your life and reshapes your reality. Beloved, engaging your spirit is not a passive experience. It requires action, intentionality, and openness. Are you willing to fully commit to connecting with your inner spirit, to speaking words of life, to praying with faith, and to trusting the unseen power that moves on your behalf? The moment you decide to do so, transformation begins to unfold. Your spirit is the gateway to freedom, to clarity, and to empowerment. When you learn to engage it fully, you will notice changes not only in your circumstances, but also in your reactions, your mindset, and your ability to navigate life's challenges. Have you been relying too much on human strength or trying to manage situations on your own? It's time to tap into the divine resource that has been within you all along to experience the transformation you've been seeking immediately and powerfully. Beloved of the Lord, let us now focus on the powerful principle of believing, receiving, and stepping into divine breakthrough, because this is the moment where faith moves from theory into action and your life begins to shift in extraordinary ways. Have you ever found yourself praying, hoping, or longing for change, yet wondering why the breakthrough you desire seems so far away? What if the key is not in what you are doing, in how fully you are willing to believe that God's promises are already active in your life? Belief is the foundation of every breakthrough. When you truly believe, you are declaring that God is bigger than your circumstances, stronger than your fears, and faithful to act on your behalf. Have you ever paused to ask yourself what you really believe about your life and your future? Are you holding on to doubts that quietly limit the power of your prayers and keep the doors of opportunity closed? Belief is more than intellectual assent. It is a deep, confident trust that what God has spoken will come to pass, and it requires aligning your heart, your mind, and your actions with that faith. Receiving is the next step. Many times we pray and believe, yet we fail to receive fully because we are hesitant to open our hands and hearts to the blessings that are already on the way. Can you imagine God holding a gift just for you, waiting for you to say, "Yes, I receive it"? That simple act of reception activates the flow of divine favor. Receiving requires humility and openness. It's acknowledging that you are ready and willing to allow God's power to work in every area of your life. Have you taken a moment today to truly receive the blessings, opportunities, and breakthroughs that are already prepared for you? Stepping into divine breakthrough requires action. Faith without action is dormant, but faith expressed through intentional steps releases the power of God into your life. Have you noticed that sometimes the first step feels small, almost insignificant, yet it sets in motion a chain of events that leads to transformation? Every breakthrough begins with a step, a word spoken in faith, a decision made in trust, an alignment of your spirit with God's purpose. Are you willing to take that step today, even if it feels uncertain, knowing that God is leading you toward victory? Beloved, breakthroughs often appear at the intersection of belief, reception, and action. When you believe that God is able, when you receive what He has for you, and when you step forward in faith, a supernatural shift occurs. Have you felt that sense of alignment before, where everything seems to flow, obstacles begin to fall, and clarity emerges in your mind and heart? That is the manifestation of divine breakthrough, and it is not reserved for a select few. It is available to you right now. It's important to recognize that breakthrough is both spiritual and practical. Spiritually, it is the power of God working in your favor, changing circumstances that seem impossible. Practically, it requires you to act in ways that demonstrate your faith, speaking truth over your life, making choices that honor God, and refusing to be moved by fear or doubt. Can you think of an area in your life where taking a bold, faith-filled step could unlock a breakthrough you've been waiting for? That is the door that belief and reception open for you. Sometimes breakthroughs are delayed not because God is unwilling, but because we are unwilling to align fully with His plan. Are there areas in your life where hesitation, doubt, or fear has been holding you back? When you choose to believe fully, receive intentionally, and step forward courageously, you position yourself to receive what has been prepared for you long before you even asked. This is why your mindset, your focus, and your willingness to act are critical components of stepping into breakthrough. Beloved, the process of believing, receiving, and stepping forward also strengthens your spirit. It trains your faith to trust in God's timing, His methods, and His wisdom. Have you noticed how, as you practice trust, your confidence grows and fear diminishes? Each act of faith becomes a building block for greater breakthroughs in the future. You are not just experiencing one moment of divine intervention, you are cultivating a lifestyle of breakthrough, a pattern of trust, faith, and spiritual alignment that produces consistent results. Receiving breakthroughs also requires gratitude. When you acknowledge the blessings that have already been given, your heart becomes fertile ground for new miracles. Are you willing to take a moment to reflect on the doors God has already opened in your life, even the small ones? Act of recognition releases a flow of favor that invites more blessings, more opportunities, and more answers to your prayers. Gratitude and reception go hand in hand. They prepare your spirit to embrace the fullness of God's provision. Breaking through internal and external barriers is also part of this process. Belief empowers you to see possibilities beyond your current limitations. Receiving strengthens your readiness to accept God's best. Stepping forward enacts the change that allows miracles to manifest. Have you been waiting for conditions to be perfect before you act? Or are you willing to step into breakthrough even in the midst of uncertainty? Often, it is the courageous step taken in faith that unlocks the floodgates of God's favor and power in your life. Beloved, every breakthrough is a combination of spiritual authority and personal alignment. When you believe fully, receive intentionally, and take decisive steps in faith, You are partnering with God in a powerful way. Are you ready to move from hope to expectation, from desire to experience, and from prayer to manifestation? This is the moment where the invisible becomes visible, where faith translates into results, and where divine power moves mightily on your behalf. Beloved of the Lord, as we draw this powerful moment to a close, I want you to feel the weight of what you've just experienced, the awareness that fear, anxiety, and internal pressure do not have to define your life. You have learned how to release what is not yours to carry, how to activate supernatural peace, how to break free from tension, how to engage your spirit fully, and how to believe, receive, and step boldly into your breakthrough.